Hello and welcome to the classroom instruction video for Can You Survive the Japanese Invasion of the Philippines? So in this game, you and your group will be playing as members of a Filipino family trying to survive the Japanese invasion of the Philippines. And I would note that instructors, you may want to pause this video at various moments to hand out materials and to guide students. And one thing that I would recommend is that you break up into groups of 4. If you need some groups of 3 or 2, that's also fine, but you shouldn't have a group of 5 because you're playing a family of 4 and each person will be playing one character. So please go ahead and break into groups and distribute the character cards, making sure that each person has at least one character. It is okay for people to play more than 2 characters if you have less than 4 people. So if you look at your character card, you can see you have a name. So this is Rosario Canyon. And you have different statistics. So bravery is how many dice you roll during a bravery check. Cunning is how many dice you roll during a cunning check. And these are just your regular 6-sided dice. And diligence is how many dice you roll during a hunger check. When you roll dice, you are looking for 4, 5s, and 6s. Those dice count as successes. 1, 2s, and 3s are failures. You ignore those. You only count anything that's a 4, 5, or 6. And sometimes you'll be asked to give a number of successes. So if you roll a 2, a 3, and a 4, you have 1 success. If you roll a 2, a 4, and a 5, you have 2 successes. If you roll a 2 and 2 5s and a 6, you have 3 successes. Health is how much health you have. If you lose a health, cross off a box. If you cross off all your boxes, your character dies. Let your instructor know if that happens. More people can be added to your family from the event deck. So you have an event deck that your instructor should pass out, and in it are characters. And whenever you add a character, you have to increase the food needed by the family by 2. And in Filipino culture, if a family member needs your help, you have to help them. Right. So they come to you and say, hey, because of the Japanese invasion, we've lost our home. We need to stay with you. You can't say no. You have to let them into your home. You have to take care of them and feed them. But there's a good chance that they will help you as much as they can, because it's also understood if someone's helping you, you need to do what you can to help them back. So in your event deck, there's basically 2 kinds of cards. One, like the one on the left, has a statement about current events. So here is hard to obtain food, subtract 2 successes during the hunger check. Okay, so that one's fairly straightforward. The one on the right is a family card. So if you draw the family card, this person goes with your family, and you have to increase the food needed by 2. But here, and this person has health, so they can die. And it says here, your cousin Pedro has come to live with you. Increase the amount of food needed. However, as he's very lucky, each family member may change 1 failure into a success on any roll each turn. So that's a good thing to have. He has a special power there. Even though he doesn't do anything else, he doesn't contribute to food. He does help with that. But he does eat food, right? So you have to increase by 2. And just as an aside, that he's holding a Hershey bar an American soldier gave him when the United States came in to help the Filipinos fight against the Japanese. So you should also have a board. And you can see on the board, you need to put your an 8 on the total food needed chart. So you start off with 4 family members, and each one requires 2 food. And if someone dies, that would go. You would move that down to 6. If someone joins your family, it would go up by 2 to 10. And then you would also add 2 food counters to the stored food box, unless your instructor tells you to add more or less. That's food that you start off with. You don't start with honor counters in your honor box yet. You'll earn those by answering questions. And then you'll see in the top middle there is a random chart. And you would, if sometimes a card will say something happens to a family member randomly, what that means is you roll on that chart. And so it might come up the father, the mother, the daughter, the son. First relative would be like Pedro if you've rolled him. And if you don't have any extra family members, you would just stop. Or I'm sorry, you would re-roll. So, for example, if you rolled second relative and you don't have any relatives, you would re-roll till you get someone you do have. If you don't have an 8-sided dice, it's fine just to go up to 6. Now, bayanihan is a Filipino concept, which means kind of community togetherness and unity. So this is an example that if you ask a Filipino, what do you think of when you think of bayanihan? They would think of something like this. These are people moving a nipa hut, right? So this is a traditional Filipino house. It's very hot in the Philippines, so you don't need to worry as much about insulation, but you do need to worry about rain. So houses and flooding. So houses are often made very light like this in the past. And if you wanted to move, you could just have your neighbors actually pick up your house and move it. And that's what's happening here. And so that's considered a sign of togetherness. And you can get bayanihan counters when you do things that help brings the community together. You also need dice. I recommend at least 15 for each group. And you need some place to roll them in. And the thing is, one thing to keep in mind when you have that many dice you're rolling, it's very important that you do not roll them one at a time, and that everyone rolls quickly to keep the game moving. So please do roll your dice at the same time and follow your instructor. And then it's helpful if your instructor has these to place them on a board that marks failures and successes. It makes things go a lot more quickly. It allows you to count things quickly if you divide them up this way. All right. So I would encourage the instructor to pause until you're ready to start. We're going to start with our question. Okay, which of the following was not a way that Japan was fascist during World War II? Gain an honor if you get it right. A, Japan was anti-communist. B, Emperor Hirohito was a dynamic leader who often gave inspiring speeches to the Japanese people. C, Japan was authoritarian. Or D, Japanese society was militarized. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1 is B. So if you got that right, give yourself an honor token. Draw a card, and I would encourage the instructor to pause here to help students with their cards if they need it. So in each turn, there is an event, and sometimes this event requires you to make a choice. Sometimes it's just something that happens. This time it's just something that happens. And what happens is Japanese troops are going to seize rice as part of their invasion, and that means only 5s and 6s count during the hunger check this turn. Right. So remember, usually a success is a 4. This time it has to be a 5 or a 6. 4s are failures. So for the hunger check, again, I would encourage the instructor to go through this step by step and help the students. The first hunger check is a little bit tricky, but after that, people will understand it. So each family member rolls a number of dice equal to their diligence number. So go ahead and have everyone roll their dice. Once they do that, count the number of successes. These would only be 5s and 6s, right? Not 4s because of the event. And add that many food counters to the earning box on the board. Right, so you count number of successes. So if you have like 5 successes, you would add 5 food counters to the board. Then you remove a number of food counters equal to the number in the food needed box. If you have 4 family members, that would be 8. If you picked up with your card that you drew, if you picked up an additional family member, that would be 10. If you have food counters left over in the earnings box after feeding everyone, move them into the stored food box. If you do not have enough food, you can spend honor to obtain food from other people. This means other people in your village. It doesn't mean other students. It just symbolizes that because people respect you, they're willing to give you some food. 1 honor counter purchases 1 food. If you're still lacking food after spending honor, one of your family member loses a health. Determine who loses the health roll on the random table on your board. Do this for each missing food. So if you're missing 3 food, you would have to roll this 3 times. If anyone dies, let your instructor know. Alrighty, so we're now ready for our next turn. Which of the following statements about Japan during World War II is false? A, no one single person was really in charge. B, the civilian government was too weak to control the military. C, the Japanese public opposed the assassination of civilian officials since they had elected them. Or D, the military was convinced that only expansion to obtain resources could save Japan. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1 is C. Right, draw a card. Filipino guerrillas mobilized to gain control of the region and prevent further seizure of resources. Japanese soldiers moved to attack. Do you help the Filipino guerrillas? So with your group, make a decision to do this. All right, I'm going to tell you what happens in 3, 2, 1. If you did not choose to help, you make the next hunger check with only 5s and 6s counting. People don't want to help someone who lacks bayanihan, right? Your fellow Filipinos needed your help. You didn't help them, so they're less likely to help you. If you do help, make a bravery check. So what that means is roll number of dice equal to your bravery on your card and add those, count the number of successes. And in a few moments, I'll tell you what the result is. The instructor may wish to pause the video. All right. So if you have 8 or more successes, you distinguish yourself in battle and help win a great victory. Gain 2 bayanihan and 1 honor, but a random family member loses 1 health. All right, because they were wounded in battle. If you have 6 or 7 successes, you help win. So gain 1 bayanihan, but a random family member loses 1 health. If you have 4 or 5 successes, the Filipino guerrillas won, but it was a hard-fought battle. Gain 1 bayanihan, but roll twice on the random chart with each family member who comes up losing 1 health. If you have 3 or less successes, the Filipino guerrillas won, but with heavy losses. Roll 3 times on the random chart with each family member who comes up losing 1 health. And it's possible for a family member to lose more than 1 health if you keep rolling them. In any case, you are successful. So what that means is that if you were part of the group that fought back, your 4, 5s, and 6s count on the next hunger check. We're back to our hunger check. Each family member rolls a number of dice equal to their diligence number. Count the number of successes, and add that many food counters to the earning box on the board. Remove a number of food counters equal to the number in the food needed box. If you have food counters left over in the earnings box after feeding everyone, move them into the stored food box. If you do not have enough food, you can spend honor to obtain food from other people. 1 honor counter purchases 1 food. If you're still lacking food after spending honor, one of your family member loses a health. Determine who loses the health, roll on the random table on your board. Do this for each missing food. If anyone dies, let your instructor know. Which of the following was not a tactic Japan used against China? A. Biological and germ warfare. B. The bombing of civilians. C. The execution of POWs. Or D. Human torpedoes. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1 is D. Human torpedoes. Draw a card. A crew from an American submarine trying to gain intelligence was shipwrecked. Some Americans survived, but are captured by the Japanese. Do you attack the Japanese forces using your bravery, or do you wait and try and break the Americans out later, cunning, or do you do nothing? I'll give the decision in 3, 2, 1. If you do nothing, you make the next hunger check with only 5s and 6s counting as successes. Make a check using the characteristic you chose. So if your group chose bravery, everyone rolls bravery. If your group chose cunning, everyone rolls cunning. If you had 8 or more successes with cunning, you trick the Japanese soldiers and rescue the Americans, gain 2 bayanihan counters. If you use bravery, you attack and defeat the Japanese soldiers, gain 2 bayanihan counters. If you have 5, 6, or 7 successes with cunning, you're able to break the American soldiers out of jail, gain 1 bayanihan counter. If you used bravery, you break the American soldiers out, but a random family member is wounded and loses 1 health, gain 1 bayanihan counter. If you had 3 or 4 successes, something went wrong, and a random family member loses 1 health. If you have less than 3 successes, something went terribly wrong, roll twice on the random chart with the resulting person losing 1 health. Time for a hunger check. Each family member rolls a number of dice equal to their diligence number. Count the number of successes, 4, 5s, and 6s. Count as successes unless otherwise noted, and add that many food counters to the earning box on the board. Remove a number of food counters equal to the number in the food needed box. If you have food counters left over in the earnings box after feeding everyone, move them into the stored food box. If you don't have enough food, you can spend honor to obtain food from other people. 1 honor counter purchases 1 food. If you're still lacking food after spending honor, one of your family member loses a health. To determine who loses the health, roll on the random table on your board. Do this for each missing food. If anyone dies, let your instructor know. Who launched the Japanese seizure of Manchuria? A. The Prime Minister of Japan. B. Emperor Hirohito. C. Low-ranking military officers. Or D. The Supreme Commander of the Japanese Army. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1 was C. Okay, draw a card. You have made contact with American officers. They have provided you with a radio that can be used to transmit intelligence reports and arrange supply. But the Japanese military is searching hard to locate and destroy radio posts. Do you help protect the radios from the Japanese? If no, you make the next hunger check with only 5s and 6s, counting as successes. If you do, make a cunning check. If you had 8 or more successes, you did a fantastic job protecting the radio. Gain 2 by Nihon counters. If you have 5, 6, or 7 successes, you did a pretty good job protecting the radio, but you had to move it several times, limiting its effectiveness. Gain 1 by a Nihon counter. If you had 3 or 4 successes, you failed to protect the radio, lose 1 honor. If you had less than 3 successes, the radio was located while one of your family members was present. Use a random chart to find out who it was. They lose 1 health. Hunger check. Each family member rolls a number of dice equal to their diligence number. Count the number of successes and add that many food counters to the earnings box on the board. Remove a number of food counters equal to the number in the food needed box. If you have food counters left over in the earnings box after feeding everyone, move them into the stored food box. If you do not have enough food, you can spend honor to obtain food from other people. 1 honor counter purchases 1 food. If you are still lacking food after spending honor, one of your family member loses a health. Determine who loses the health, roll on the random table on your board. Do this for each missing food. If anyone dies, let your instructor know. Which statement best describes the tactic Japan used in China and how the Chinese responded? A. Japan used brutal tactics in a successful attempt to break the Chinese will to fight. B. Japan used brutal tactics to try and break the Chinese will to fight, but this just made the Chinese resist all the more. C. Japan made a concentrated efforts to win the support of the Chinese population, which is so successful it was able to pull forces from China to attack the United States. Or D. Japan made concentrated efforts to win the support of the Chinese population, but failed because Chinese and Japanese cultures are too different. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1 was B. Draw a card. Sabotage. You have learned that the Americans will invade soon. They are requesting that you carry out activities to help them. Do you send ambush for Japanese troops using bravery, try and sneak into a base and destroy supplies using cunning, or do nothing? If you do nothing, you make the next hunger check with only 5s and 6s, counting as successes. If you had 8 or more successes with cunning, you blew up a lot of supplies, gain 2 by Nihon counters. If you use bravery, you attack and easily defeat a unit of Japanese soldiers, gain 2 by Nihon counters. If you have 5, 6, or 7 successes with cunning, you blow up a significant amount of supplies, gain 1 by Nihon counter. If you use bravery, you defeat a unit of Japanese soldiers with some losses, gain 1 by Nihon counter, but randomly choose 1 family member to lose 1 health. If you had 3 or 4 successes, something went wrong, roll twice on the random chart with the resulting person losing 1 health. If you had less than 3 successes, something went terribly wrong, roll 3 times on the random chart with the resulting person losing 1 health. Each family member rolls a number of dice equal to their diligence number for the hunger check. Count the number of successes and add that many food counters to the earnings box on the board. Remove a number of food counters equal to the number in the food needed box. If you had food counters left over in the earnings box after feeding everyone, move them into the stored food box. If you do not have enough food, you can spend honor to obtain food from other people. 1 honor counter purchases 1 food. If you still are lacking food after spending honor, one of your family member loses a health. Determine who loses the health, roll on the random table on your board. Do this for each missing food. If anyone dies, let your instructor know. Which of the following statements about Japanese expansion is false? A. Japan invaded the Soviet Union in order to support Hitler's invasion. B. The United States reacted to Japan's expansion by refusing to sell oil. C. Japan expanded to Vietnam from where it would be able to seize oil in the South. Or D. Japan launched a sneak naval attack against the United States, which was similar to what it had done during the Russo-Japanese War. And the correct answer in 3, 2, 1, A. All right, draw a card. Good news. The beginning of liberation has arrived. If the Americans are now landing in southern Leyte, You can see General Douglas MacArthur there in the center. To his right is the president of the Philippines, Osmeña. There you can see American soldiers advancing, and there you can see one of those nipa huts we mentioned previously. And there you can see Filipinos offering aid and support to the Americans. There is a carabao, also known as a water buffalo, which is used in farming, but can also be used to help provide support by carrying supplies. And you can see it's very valuable, very helpful to the Americans, as together Americans and Filipinos worked to liberate the Philippines. And here you can see a map of where the initial American invasion would land. There you can see Leyte on the west with Samar to the north. And on the right, you can see a zoomed in view that shows a lot of the important towns. So the beginning of liberation has arrived. It's October 20th, 1945, and the Americans have returned. It's now time to put everything into the liberation of the Philippines. So everyone should roll their cunning and bravery and count successes. And it's good. I would encourage the instructor to make sure to help students get this number before we move to the next step. Okay, so once you have that total, count your Bayanihan counters and add that number to your successes to get your total victory points. And I would encourage, again, the instructor to go to meet with the students and do that. All right, now that you've got your total victory points, let's see what that means. How much did you help with the liberation of the Philippines? Okay, so if you have less than or equal to 15 victory points, you are victorious, but at a cost. The failure to help sufficiently has led to the needless loss of Filipino and American lives. If you have 16 to 25 victory points, you win, and you've helped the Americans in liberating the Philippines, and while some American and Filipino lives were lost, it is seen as a necessary sacrifice. If you have more than 25 victory points, you've won a great victory. You've significantly helped the Americans in liberating the Philippines, saving a large number of Filipino and American lives. And good news, there's no need for a hunger check. The Americans brought food. Questions for reflection. How well did your family do? Why do you think that way? In what different ways did Filipinos work with Americans to achieve their shared goal of liberating the Philippines?